Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. Today, we are going to talk about reflection and projection. And the idea here with this episode is we're coming to the end of the year. This is the last episode that we're going to have for the year. And so we were thinking, what better way to sort of wrap up 2024 with an exercise that I can give you that will just help you sort of reflect on the past year and maybe where you want to go into the next year. And then when we jump into 2025, oh my gosh, that's coming so soon. We're actually going to do a little bit more in depth when it comes to creating your value system and your vision. But right now, I thought this would be a great place to start. It's, the end of the year, we tend to do it anyway, where we sort of look back and think about things and analyze things. So I thought I'd just give you some guided questions to get you started. It's really helpful, I think, sometimes when we have the opportunity to look back just to see how far we've come, because it often really kind of helps put our perspective into reality. Because a lot of times when we're feeling overwhelmed or discouraged in the place where we are right now, we're focused on like this immediate day or hour or week. And when we look back over the past 3 months or 6 months or a year or 3 years, it can really shift the perspective pretty quickly, because you're like, wow, I really have come a long way, which means I can continue moving forward. In this moment, I might feel stuck, but if we look back, we can kind of pull proof that we are somebody that makes changes and has growth and continues to move forward. So the first question is, what are the biggest wins I have had? So I'm just going to throw out examples, but I want you to make sure that, and I will recap the questions if you want to write them down at the end of the episode, but I'm just going to give examples to get you thinking, but I really want you to personally answer the question for yourself. So first question is, what are the biggest wins I have had? So some examples might be, I've learned more about setting boundaries. Maybe you wouldn't have thought of writing that down because you thought, well, if it's a win, it means that I have to be like super, super good at it, right? But that's not true. What have you learned this year? What tools have you incorporated, right? Like if setting boundaries was something that you've never done in your whole life, but you're learning more about how to communicate them and you're practicing them and you're beginning to implement them, that's huge. So write that down. Maybe another example is you're communicating more. Again, maybe it's not perfect, but are you guys talking more? That's one of the things that, you can hear from different couples is, oh my gosh, like we've never talked like this before. And we hope that for you. Last week we were talking about, connection questions and making sure that you're opening the door for conversation, not less when you're busy, but more when you're busy. And so certainly, after discovery and disclosure and recovery and all this kind of stuff, a lot of people find that they communicate more. Is it perfect at this point? Maybe for you, maybe not for you. But I think opening that door and making sure you're having the conversations, if that's happening, that's a win. Write that down.
I think too, like from the addict side, like maybe there was a time frame that you were able to achieve in sobriety. And if you possibly relapsed, you were able to learn from the relapse and really change your patterns after the relapse. Yep. Those are major milestones. For sure.
Yeah. Maybe you've hit 90 days. Maybe you've hit 6 months. Maybe this is like your year mark, write any of those down. Those are huge. Maybe you were feeling overwhelmed 6 months ago and now you're feeling a little more calm. That's a huge win, right? Like anything like that. Maybe for the betrayed partner, my husband has established sobriety. That's a win for him. That's a win for you. Maybe you're practicing different tools that your coach or therapist has given you over the past few months, maybe over the past couple of weeks. Maybe this is really new for you and you've just started learning. That's okay. Maybe you've listened to 10 podcasts, write it down, You've done some research. That's okay. So the first question, what are the biggest wins I've had? So just kind of think through, since discovery, what are some of the things that have shifted? What have you learned? What have you engaged in? The second question is, what are the biggest challenges you're currently facing? So some examples, and again, I want you to answer all of these personally, but some examples might be, I'm struggling with anxiety. So maybe you are really early on, and that's just part of where you are in the beginning of navigating everything. Or maybe everything has really calmed down, but now your nervous system, like I talked about, I think it was several episodes ago, now your nervous system is, depleted. And so now you have anxiety, even though everything is pretty stable. That's a struggle. So whatever it is you're currently facing, go ahead and write that down. Maybe it's, I struggle to trust, even though I know it's safe now. That's a really common one that I get is like, we might be so many months in, we might be a year in, but how do you trust, right? Like that's a struggle that many people will relate to. Maybe you just feel like, I just feel overwhelmed, like I don't have a clear plan for the next steps. Or maybe we don't always communicate the best. Or maybe there's specific triggers that are still coming up for you, whatever phase you're at. It could be 1 month in, a year in, 3 years in. Whatever your biggest challenges are that don't feel resolved to you right now, write those down. The third question is, what would I most like to improve personally over the next year? So this is where and again, this is for both people. All of these questions are for both people. So what would I most like to improve personally over the next year? This is an opportunity for self-reflection. So for the addict, maybe it is, how can I continue, excuse me, maybe it is, how can I continue to connect to my emotions and communicate them clearly? Maybe for the betrayed partner, it is, how can I communicate how I'm feeling more clearly when I'm triggered, right? Or how can we continue to, or no, that's the next question is for the couple, but as an individual, like how can I continue to work on my own emotional processing or, things like that?
Well, healing and recovery is being able to show up better and better in the world that you live in. And so like, you maybe this first year you just didn't relapse if you're the addict, right? But then the second year you're going to start to be more open in your communication, or maybe you're going to be more empathetic at work, or whatever that's going to be. That each year should bring some different goals.
Yeah. So what would I most like to improve personally over the next year? So make sure it's something that is about you and something that you have control over that you can work on to answer that question. The fourth question is, what would I like for us as a couple to improve most over the next year? So maybe those overlap a little bit, but one means this is something that I can totally change on my own and I can kind of work through my own healing. The other is something that we would work on together, and it's a vision of like what I would like for us to continue to improve on. So maybe there's just some things in your relationship right now. And it's going to be different depending on where you are. If you're in the first year, it might really be about communication, or it might really be about safety, or it might really be about stability, or it might really be about how can we get more, empathy around and proactive behaviors, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 years in, maybe it's more about bringing, different romance into the relationship and connection and emotional connection and spontaneity and, different things. So it totally can change. But what would I like for us as a couple to improve the most over the next year? Number 5, what tools are available to me that I can utilize to help continue moving forward? So just checking in with yourself, thinking, what are the things that I want to improve? And then going, okay, well, what are the tools available to me? So maybe you have some that you aren't currently using. We've all been there, right? Like everybody at some point, it's like, my house needs to be vacuumed. I have the vacuum, but I'm not vacuuming. Right? It's a silly example, but we've all been there where we have a resource, we're not using it. We have a tool, we're not using it. We have a supplement, we haven't taken it yet.
That sounds like a 2025 goal. I'm going to use the vacuum cleaner in the house.
So I feel judged. No. So, yeah, lots of examples there. So just thinking about what tools are available to me. But, some other examples are, have I reached out to a coach? Have I gotten a therapist? Do I need to connect to a support group? Maybe there are some books that I know about, but I haven't crack them open. Maybe I've realized I got the book. It's overwhelming for me to open the book. I need to get it on audio so I can listen to it. Maybe there are some podcasts that I need to connect with. My friend shared one. I need to listen to it. Maybe maybe you listen to Recover You religiously, but you started in the second half of 2024, and you can go back and listen to some of the old ones, whatever it is for you. But there's so many tools and resources, and we share so many of them in this podcast. So thinking about, as you're answering these questions, looking at what you're currently struggling with and where you want to go, and thinking, what tools and resources am I aware of that can help me accomplish that goal? And then the last question is, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or ruminating, what are some helpful things I can do to change the direction of my thoughts? So I think this is really important for both partners. So for an addict, this might show up as, maybe I'm triggered, maybe I'm considering relapsing, maybe my mind is ruminating on something that it shouldn't, right? And it could potentially lead to negative emotions that could lead to a relapse, or maybe it's already on the negative thoughts that could lead to a relapse. And so changing the direction of your thoughts is going to be really important. And we can choose to do that intentionally as an exercise. And for the betrayed partner, we may find ourselves laying in bed at night thinking about conversations we had with our addict partner 2 weeks ago when we asked a certain question, and we're still trying to make sense of that answer. And we just lay there, thinking about all the potential negative scenarios. And that can be really, really hard. So some different tools. And again, I want you to think about like what tools you have. Maybe there's some answers to this already that you have that you thought, oh, well, what really helps me is when I do XYZ, I just don't maybe do it all the time. So write that down. But I'm going to give you some suggestions in case you need it. One would be to call a friend. Now, obviously, if you're ruminating in bed at 11 o'clock at night, maybe that's not the best suggestion. But a lot of times, if it's during the day, calling a friend, or maybe if it's late at night, maybe texting a friend, if it's really, really important. But the reason I put that down is because often when we're in our heads, the simple act of having a conversation out loud with another human being about what we're struggling with helps diminish it right away. Literally just speaking it out loud to another person can help change the direction. Now, the caveat here would be with the intention of that being the outcome, not just calling someone to vent or to that's just going to continue the rumination. The second suggestion would be to journal. So again, thinking about nighttime, we've talked about brain dumping, keeping a journal by your bed. You could do the same thing with these types of thoughts. It's like, okay, these are recognized, they're acknowledged. Maybe they'll calm down at that point. Maybe your mind is just racing, right? And you're thinking, I just have to do this tomorrow. I have to do this tomorrow. Write it down. Some other thoughts are more around the idea of, like I mentioned, changing the direction of your brain. So to that end, some things that would be really helpful would be to read a book or listen to an audiobook. So getting different information. So when we think about brain patterns, they follow a trajectory of familiarity, and even rumination is a brain pattern. We get familiar with this fear, we get familiar with rumination itself, and it can just go on repeat. So what you want to do with really ingrained patterns in the brain is intentionally interrupt them. And so how can we do that? If you're in the middle of a rumination, what is a way that you could just totally change the trajectory of that pattern? Put something else in your brain. So if reading a book, like if you're ruminating so hard, again, that like reading with your eyes is like not going to do it. It's not going to break the pattern because you're going to keep thinking in your brain. Then maybe listen to an audiobook. Another option would be to listen to music. So if you're ruminating so much, listen to music. Maybe you choose music that you know all the words to so that your brain engages really quickly and it's listening to the music and you're thinking about the words. So again, we're not thinking here of, I'm sad, let me listen to really depressing music that's going to help me keep feeling sad. The intention here is to dramatically change the direction of like where we're spiraling. Mm-hmm. And then the last suggestion, and this could be inside of your head, if you can do that, or this could be a journaling prompt, but it would be to intentionally counter the thoughts with reframes or other potential options. So for example, if you're having a thought that keeps coming up and you know maybe logically that it doesn't make sense, but that's it, you just keep ruminating on it and your brain keeps finding all of the mostly implausible ways that this lie is actually true. or a possibility, then what you could do is write down what you believe the lie to be, or the rumination, or the fear, or the negative belief, whatever it is for you that you're ruminating on, and then counter it intentionally with like 30 to 50 other options. Because the thing about a lot of thoughts that we ruminate on is like when we worry, we are a lot of worry is based on like a fearful thing that has happened in the past, but it's about a worry about something that has not happened in the future. And so I don't know I'm sure there's a percentage that's actually accurate for this, but it's like a significant amount of your worries like never actually come true. Like you see these things floating around where it's like most of your anxieties and most of your worries like that never actually happen, right? Now, a betrayed partner is going to go, but it's already happened. And that's what I'm ruminating about, right? So this may not be appropriate for every situation, but the idea is if there is something that you know is a lie, that is untrue, that you are really focusing on and you're beginning to spiral, I want you to intentionally think of so many other different options. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. Or if it's thinking about how things will happen in the future, I want you to think about options that could happen in the future that counter the actual fear. So like for an addict, if they're like, well, I'm going to be stressed over the holidays and I'm going to, maybe an addict is a real ruminator, right? And like, I'm going to be stressed over the holidays and I'm going to relapse. And it's like a real negative pattern, right? Well, you could write down a list of like 20 alternative options. Well, maybe I'm going to feel calm. Maybe I'm going to feel safe. Maybe I'll feel really happy during the holidays. Maybe I'll connect with more people. Or instead of saying maybe, you just say like, I will, right?
Maybe I will have a great plan in place. So
I'm going to create a plan
because that's what's going to help you.
Here are the things that I will do to make sure that doesn't happen, right? So just some suggestions. But again, I want you to, talk to your own coach, talk to your own therapist, maybe if this is something that you struggle with. But how can we get those thoughts out of your brain, calm the brain down, change the direction of the thoughts when you're feeling overwhelmed or ruminating so that you can get some sleep, move through your day, move through your week. If it's revisited, you can always find what works. And if it doesn't work, move on to the next thing on the list and try it. Do some jumping jacks, listen to some music, read a different book, but make sure it's something that will engage your brain because that's going to be the most impactful. Well, I almost did it, Patrick, at 16 minutes. We were super close.
17.
We were super close to the 15-minute mark. We do hope this is helpful. We know that this is the last episode of 2024. We just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening. We know we have several people that listen, really, really consistently every episode, every week. And we're just so, so thankful for you. And we hope that this is helpful. And we just really want to invite you to take the next couple weeks to look back to other episodes, either that have been helpful or that you've missed. We have so many different series about specific tools that the addict can use to get into sobriety. We have several episodes around creating and developing intimacy after betrayal. We have several episodes around communication. We have episodes about talking to your children, so many things. So just scroll through the titles, see what might be most helpful. If you are, in the habit of listening every Wednesday and you don't want to stop for the next couple weeks, we're only going to take about 2 weeks off, the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's. But if you want to keep that habit going, definitely check out our previous episodes. And if you could, a really wonderful, magical holiday gift to us would be if you go to Apple Podcasts, scroll all the way down to the bottom, leave a review for us and let us know how this podcast or how this episode or any episode has impacted your life. If you find Recover You to be helpful, we would so appreciate it. It's a great thank you to us to hear those stories, to hear your feedback. And it also helps other people to find the podcast. So if you are somebody that's going through this and it's been really helpful for you, we want to pass that along and we want to make it easy for other people to find the message of recovery and find the message of healing. And so if you could just take 2 minutes at the end of this episode to leave a review, that would just be a magical, wonderful Christmas gift to us. And we would so appreciate it. We wish you the merriest of Christmases and the happiest New Year, and we will see you in 2025. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.